Well, the Global Gender Work and Organization Gathering is set to take place for the first time on African soil in Stellenbosch. The meeting aims to address issues concerning women and other marginalized gender groups, striving to reduce exclusion within society. Well, societal acknowledgement of the LGBTQI+ community has moved into sharper focus. There remains a lack of research on workplace discrimination and its remedies based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The conference provides a unique space to understand barriers faced by women and people with non-normative gender identities. It seeks to foster a deeper understanding of the factors that can support workplace transformation towards the inclusion of individuals with diverse and intersecting genders or gender identities. For more on this, let's now go there live. As you can see, we have there, I think that is Justice Cameron currently on the podium, and we're going to take you there now live.
And it sought to replace the racist subordinations of apartheid with a society that would place at its very core the concept of human dignity. How many of you have read Professor Catherine McKinnon? You've read Professor? She's terrifying. She came to the Constitutional Court and I had a fight with her. It was such fun. I think it's the only time anyone's ever had a fight with her. She's a formidable theorist. But she said, you don't need dignity. Why have you got dignity? You need equality in your country. It's an old debate amongst constitutionalists. And I started explaining that we have human dignity at the core of our constitutional project because apartheid did exactly the opposite. It denigrated, it subordinated, it stigmatized and ostracized and eliminated black culture, black people, black skins, black history. It was a shameful nightmare. And Professor McKinnon had to listen for the first time in her life. The vision, the dream, the noble dream. It is a dream because 30 years after democratic emancipation and the coming into force of the Constitution, 27th of April 1994, a final Constitution negotiated by the first democratically elected Assembly, came into force on the 4th of February 1996. And we have extensive state dysfunction, disintegration of independent institutions. We have a governing party which many say, many allege, many claim, has become a series of criminal syndicates, looting the state, mass looting and corruption. And yet, that dream persists. And my message to you is that we in South Africa are determined to realize that dream. The dream of dignity, the dream of equality, the dream of equality for women, for queer people. In the 1980s, I was a human rights lawyer. I was doing anti-apartheid cases, defending fighters of the ANC and other organizations who were arrested and put on trial for their lives for treason and for murder. But I also came out as a proudly gay man. And we organized the first Gay Pride March, as we then called it, and as it's still called by many people, on the African continent in October 1990. It was a wonderful day. As we left the building after the speeches, the rain came down on us and we all rejoiced. So the Constitution became the first national instrument anywhere in the world that included the words sexual orientation in the Equality Clause, and the clause protecting against unfair discrimination. And at the end of that year, in which the Constitution was adopted, President Nelson Mandela appointed me a judge. And I've never been asked, how can you serve in the High Court or the Appeal Court or the Constitutional Court as a proudly and openly gay man? Doesn't mean that we fulfilled the dream, the noble dream, the desirable vision of full equality for queer people, transgender people, intersex people. Lesbian women particularly are at risk. Your location and your class depends I live in a middle-class area of Johannesburg. I can be safe in my gender identity and queerness. If you live 25 kilometers from here in Khayelitsha, you're at risk. In Khayelitsha, which is this massive suburb to the south and to the west of Stellenbosch, there have been lesbian murders. So the dream is still one that we have to battle for. But it's worth doing so. And we have advantages in South Africa which no other country in Africa has. We have a unique history of civil society involvement. The most spectacular example I can give you is one that also affected me. In the 1980s, an AIDS epidemic started in North America, Western Europe, Australasia, the east and west coasts. By the end of the 1980s, hundreds of thousands of men, just like me, white men, homosexual men, men having sex with men, had already died of AIDS. But by the mid-1980s, it had already become clear that the main impact of the AIDS epidemic would be felt not in North America, Western Europe, or elsewhere, but in Africa, in black Africa, black heterosexual South Africa. And when Nelson Mandela became president, the national prevalence at sites for antenatal care was already between 5 and 10%. By the time he left office, that prevalence at sentinel sites was into the 20%. And a nightmare descended upon our dream in his successor, President Thabo Mbeki, who refused to accept the science of AIDS. He queried whether there really was a virus. He queried whether the virus could be detected, or if it was detected, whether it made any sense to test for it. He queried whether that virus was the cause of AIDS. He found environmental and other causes of AIDS, which critically meant that he refused our country treatment. And my point of raising that story is the glorious story of the Treatment Action Campaign, founded by Zaki Ahmed in 1998 on the death of a brave campaigner, most important queer man in South Africa's history, Simon Tseko Nkodi, who came from Sebokeng. At his death, Zaki announced the formation of the Treatment Action Campaign with the purpose of tackling the drug companies who had a monstrous premise. Even though many of the drugs that were saving lives across North America and Western Europe, that were giving us Lazarus stories, stories of recovery from deathbeds, those drugs were developed at universities and institutes and centers that were government funded, but the pharmaceutical companies had patents on them. And Zaki confronted the companies at their headquarters. He confronted their chief executive officers, and eventually, within a few years, a deal was negotiated with the help of the Clinton and the Bill Gates Foundation. And antiretroviral treatments became available on a mass scale in India drug manufacturers, and across Africa. And at that point, that very point, into President Mbeki's first term, a ghastly nightmare descended on the struggle for justice in AIDS. This denialism that I've already described to you. And the Treatment Action Campaign in Khayelitsha, one of its headquarters was in Khayelitsha, tackled President Mbeki's epistemology of AIDS as well. They marched to the union buildings. They used every single right in our new democratic Bill of Rights. And eventually they had to take him to court. When he refused to start making ARVs available, they took him to court. And in a series of extraordinary decisions, the judges of the High Court and the judges of the Constitutional Court, before I was there, upheld the Treatment Action Campaign's complaints against President Mbeki. They said, your policy on antiretrovirals does not meet the constitutional standard of reasonableness, you must start making nevirapine available to pregnant mothers who want to protect their children. The science shows that you can dramatically reduce the risk of parental transmission during birth and after birth if you administer minuscule doses of nevirapine. Reluctantly, President Mbeki's government did that. So the greatest success that we've had in our democratic society lay in street activism, in individual work. And I speak to the students here, young and old. The one student I saw who proudly put up his hand is much younger than me, but older than the average student. I'm thinking of you, sir. Please stand up. I'm very proud that you put your hand up. We welcome you. Now, what's your name, please? Sorry? Mapiwe. Well, welcome. Is this your first year at Stellenbosch? First year. First visit. We welcome you. We're delighted that you're here. Thank you. So students, young and old, have to get involved in activism. Our Constitution invites it. Our Constitution is in peril. We contrast the equality we offer women, the equality we offer people on the grounds of disability. There have been many decisions about disability. We contrast the dignity we offer queer people with what is undoubtedly the most horrific statute ever signed into law, including the Mosaic horrors, alleged horrors, including the Quranic horrors, including the New Testament horrors, the monotheistic inhibitions and imprecations on queerness. The worst statute ever enacted by humans is that signed 2 months ago by President Museveni of Uganda.